Well, welcome everyone to Resource Roundtable. Resource Roundtable is an ongoing event every third Thursday of the month, hosted by EDC Team Jefferson. And it's a place where we invite one or more guests to come and introduce themselves and their services to the people of Jefferson County.
I am a business advisor with the Center For Inclusive Entrepreneurship. We're a nonprofit here in Jefferson and Kalaloch. I work out of Port Angeles, and we work with the smallest businesses to really help them grow, contribute to the community, and give a little bit more self-direction to the owners. We started partnering with Labor and Industries last fall, and we're trained on some of the common issues that small businesses run into, along with we spoke a lot with L&I as we were kind of working out how we'd want to talk about it to get as much of the important information across as quickly as we could, and directing people towards the L&I website when there are the real specific questions to answer. And as Cindy alluded to, we do more than just L&I. We've got a pretty cool project wrapping up here in a few weeks. The Green Equity Accelerator is a business accelerator that we've been running since late winter, early spring. I forget, it's been going on long enough. I forget when it started, and it's ending here pretty quick. And on June 8th, we're going to have a graduation event at the old alcohol plant in Port Hadlock for the businesses that have made it through. There's a whole range of them. All of them are doing a business that will make them money, but more importantly and simultaneously will have a positive benefit for the planet and for the environment around us. So it's on June 8th from 5 to, I believe, 8:30 out at the old alcohol. We've got food, we've got entertainment. You'll be able to learn about the businesses and shake some hands, meet people interested in taking care of the planet. So as we dive in, I will be covering a lot of different things about labor and industry. Put your questions in the chat. And at the end of it, we can turn the recording off for some questions if that would make you feel more comfortable to ask them. And all right, away we go. We're talking about labor and industries and small businesses, and what all you really need to look at and what you need to be aware of in your small business. L&I is involved in a lot of different aspects of a business. Some businesses, you're going to be involved with them right at the start, before you're really open, before you're able to do anything. Others, you're not going to have to think about L&I until you start hiring help. The businesses that really have to work with L&I to begin with, anything that's construction related, you're likely going to have to register with Labor and Industries to become a registered contractor, get your license, get your bond, all of that. And you would be surprised at what falls underneath construction in the eyes of Labor and Industry. I helped a client a few months ago. He wanted to start a gutter cleaning business. And the way that the law in Washington is written, with Labor and Industries, they use or. So somebody who cleans a gutter has the exact same licensing requirements as somebody who's up there on the roof installing gutters. Landscapers, if you're installing pavers of any kind, you count as construction and have to get registered with Labor and Industries. And those are some really big issues that we've run into. They have a website. They've got a page on their website that lists all the different specialized contractors, as they call it. there's a whole mess covering a whole range. The general contractor is also included in there. That gives a contractor freedom to do almost any of the specialties. It's a little more expensive, and the bond requirement is higher for that. And an important thing is, if you are a business that's required to be licensed with L&I, licensed and registered with L&I, it is illegal to advertise without your L&I license displayed in the advertisement. Everybody makes that mistake. You will see it if you're advertising on Facebook. Any handyman posting should technically have their labor and industries license on it. So be aware that it can get you in trouble. A business card needs to have it. A flyer on a cork board at the gas station needs to have it as well. So that's something to think of. Most people are making that mistake, which isn't a big deal as long as L&I doesn't catch you making that mistake, because the way L&I's enforcement is written is they must fine for anything that breaks a labor and industry law if it is discovered by the regulatory compliant side of labor and industries. The other industry that really needs a lot of labor and industry interaction are food trucks, food trailers, or any like prefabricated facility that's used for cooking. They have to inspect and approve the construction and the plans before you even take it to the health department. And it was really slow during the beginning of the pandemic. They have since started staffing back up, so it is a little faster. But if you're looking to open a food truck or any modular facility that people are cooking in, you're going to want to start talking to L&I right away, especially before you go and buy whatever it is. If you're buying something new, you want to talk to L&I, get a grasp of their regulations and layout requirements. So you got your business started, it's running. If you had to talk to L&I, you did. If you didn't have to, you just started and it was a little bit easier for you. And now you're getting a little too busy. You're not sleeping enough at night, you're working too late, and you need help. And there's a few different ways to do it. Has anybody in here hired an independent contractor? Or perfect. Yeah. Independent contractors are the cheapest way to get help. Having an employee is really expensive, and there's a lot of requirements that come with getting that first employee. So a lot of businesses will first look at an independent contractor. And like I believe Alan mentioned, there has been some movement of bringing those independent contractors back into employment. And a lot of that is tied to what the state requires around an independent contractor. To be an independent contractor, there's a 6 to 7 point test depending on industry. The construction industry has the 7th, and they have to pass it. They have to pass all of it. And when they're an independent contractor, and Miko can put that checklist in the chat. When you're an independent contractor, you as the hirer don't have to pay any of the taxes. You don't have to pay workers' comp. It's no different than you buying something at a hardware store. It's one business transacting with another business. A big part of, if I could boil down the 6 to 7 points to a few, it's going to be who controls their day and time. Are they discoverable by the public for what you're hiring them to do? And are you providing most of what they need to do the work? So if somebody shows up at 8 o'clock every single day because you require it, and they wear your uniform and they use your tools and equipment, they're probably your employee. Even if you and them have a contract saying that they're an independent contractor, if they don't meet the independent contractor requirements, the state looks at them like an employee. And if they get hurt, and they can file a claim with L&I, and you will be fined for miscategorizing an employee, for not paying workers' comp, for all of that. So you really want to be sure when you're hiring an independent contractor that they're legally an independent contractor. Employees have a lot more regulations around them, and they're your employees. You've got a lot more control, so there is that benefit. You get to hire them, you get to tell them what to do, tell them where you want them, tell them when you want them to show up. And if you want an employee, if you need somebody, that's the only solution, is you'll get an employee. But they're expensive. If you want to estimate how much an employee is actually going to cost you, the state of Washington has something in the small business guide referred to as it's a payroll calculator. I forgot to send it to Miko, so I'll put it into the chat here towards the end of this hour. But they've got a calculator out there that you can plug in the wage you want to pay them, and it will calculate out your payroll taxes, your paid family medical leave, your Washington workers' comp, all of those things, and give you the true cost of keeping that employee on the payroll. The other tricky part of it is hiring your first employee requires the same amount of L&I paperwork as starting a business and hiring 50 people right off the bat. You have to register with L&I. And to do that, you go in and update in your Department of Revenue account that you're going to be hiring employees. And when you do that, Department of Revenue lets ESD, it lets L&I know that employees will be hired. And the nice thing about that is they will reach out to you to get your account set up. So it puts the ball into the state government's court, and they will do a lot of it to get you on track. There are wage and hour rules. Overtime rules have to be followed. There are minimum wage rules that are increasing every year at this point. And workers' compensation is also a pretty important thing to track when it comes to employment, because it is often an unexpected expense. And one thing to keep in mind, the workers' compensation rate, which is what you pay per hour per employee, is different across industries and different within the companies in that industry based on their history of injuries and claims. And more importantly, that specific rate stays with the business, even if the business is sold to a new owner. So you've got your employees hired, and now you gotta keep them safe. Workers' comp, like we were talking about earlier, you have to pay it for every employee that gets a payroll. If you're the owner, you can elect to pay workers' comp for yourself. We've really only seen that happen in industries where if the owner gets hurt, they're not making any money. So we've seen it in some small agriculture, some smaller construction businesses. And you have to report your workers' comp and any injuries to labor and industry, even if there is nothing to report. And a important thing about having workers is you want to keep them safe. And L&I, that's their big purpose, is to keep employers safe, and really to kind of, with some of the things they have, protect the employer from their employees getting hurt as well. One thing that people will often run into, the written accident prevention plan is required. Every business needs to have it. The Labor and Industries website has some templates, has some free examples up there on their website. Use them. They're great. They cover a lot of the things. One thing to be aware of with the accident prevention program, you are responsible for keeping it updated. Even if you have one written and the rules change after it's written, you have to keep track of the changes and update it yourself. An example, I believe it was last year, the state has added the excess heat or outdoor heat addenda to a required accident prevention plan, which just states that if your employees are working outside over a set temperature, there are certain things you are required to provide them, breaks and shade and water, within a set amount of time. And a lot of people are missing it because it came out recently, and you have to go and find it yourself in order to add it. You also are required to have employee safety training. If you are it's different for each industry. If you're in construction, it has to be every single job. If you're in agriculture, it's monthly. If you're anything else, it's kind of up in the air. You can do it however often you want, unless L&I decides you need to do it more often than what you're doing. That typically occurs if there's injuries, stuff like that. You're also required, I forgot to finish that word here. You're also required to have the L&I mandatory employee posters up. You've seen them in a lot of break rooms and a lot of bathrooms. It tells the employees their rights and responsibilities as employees, and communicates the rights and responsibilities of the employer to the employees. And those posters you can get, once again, off the L&I website. You can get them, download them and print them yourself, or you can request them to mail them to you for free. They are required to be displayed at a work site. And that is a mistake that you will see quite often. People don't put them up, even though they need to. And then if somebody does get hurt, the employer isn't protected, because the employee can say that, oh, I didn't know I had to be safe. I didn't know I needed to wear a hard hat when I was underneath a ladder. So having the written rules and protections protects your employees from getting hurt and protects you, because if they get hurt doing something they shouldn't, that you know they shouldn't, and that they know they shouldn't, it is a different situation than if they get hurt doing something that you never warned them about. So it's a lot of questions. There's a lot of details. There's a lot of different specific things in labor and industry. And you're probably going to need help. It's going to be different for every situation. And there's a few different people you can reach out for. You can reach out to me. My email is up here with any of these questions. I'm here to talk. I don't work for Labor and Industries. So really, if you need help understanding what you find on LNI website, or if you know something must be there and just can't really find where it is, shoot me an email. I'll help you out. Labor and Industries also has a small business office, which is separate from the compliance and fining side of Labor and Industries and does not talk to them. And the small business division provides free confidential assistance with all labor and industry related questions. If you need help working out your accident prevention plan to the level of detail that you want, they're there to help. And they can help in both English or Spanish. And those are the email addresses for them, small business, and then businesses in Spanish as well. And so that's the slide. I'll get this out of the way and we can start working through some questions. Yeah, go ahead, Ben.
One thing that I heard of recently, and I don't know if you have a quick rule of thumb or a chart, and that is that there were all sorts of new minimum salary guidelines for employees that are paid on a salary basis. And hourly too, I believe. In addition to minimum wage, the minimum wage is going up, but then you think, oh well, we'll just bring this person on at $40,000 a year. Not anymore. You don't. So can you let me know where those guardrails are?
Yeah, I have a table somewhere that demonstrates it, which I will have to find. But one thing to keep in mind is those thresholds are different if you've got 50 employees or less, or if you have 50 or greater. The 50 or greater are, I believe they're already at the new required salary. The 50 or fewer, they're having a few more years to kind of stretch it out. But along with that, they also have duty and responsibility questions around salary as well. And I have seen that recently. I don't have it available at my fingertips, but there is a table that shows the two different business categories spaced out for the next, I believe it's 5 years until it's fully enacted. And I can find that to you and send that out to you and send it to Miko and Cindy as well. But yeah, that's a great thing to remember, because it is, once again, it's a thing that a lot of people are doing incorrectly. And you don't want to find out you did it wrong, because a disgruntled employee finds out you're doing it wrong first.
And then Jay also has a question as well in the chat.
Yeah.
Is LNI the group that checks out when someone tells about a safety issue?
Yeah, LNI they will do compliance checks. They can be random compliance checks, or they will be initiated by somebody complaining. And the dangerous thing about that, a lot of times it's people's competitors who will complain. So if they're following the rules and they see that the business across town isn't, they call up LNI and they're like, hey, you know how I had to put a guard around my mixer? The other bakery in town hasn't done it yet. I want to keep their employees safe. When really, they just want to send LNI over there, slap them with a fine, and keep their employees safe.
Yeah. Do they offer to come out and do a safety check?
They do, and it's all no cost. And there's a link that you can go ahead and get scheduled for one of those. I'll repost it so it's the freshest link. But yeah, they can pinpoint exactly what things you need to work on and give you a list.
Right.
so that it's all.
Yeah, I did have a client who, one of their employees had mentioned, had said something to L&I, and they came out to do a safety check. And it was probably, in many ways, the best thing safety-wise that had happened to him, because he was sitting there going, great, I get a free safety check. I don't think he knew that he could just call up and get it. And he wasn't doing anything really, really bad, but not everything was in compliance. But he had somebody writing down all of the things, and about half of the things that the L&I guy found were fixed before the guy left, and the other half, I think they came back 2 weeks later to check on it, and everything else was done. So it worked out well, and it's a great service.
Yeah, it's definitely the least well-used part of L&I, because they can do, you spend a little bit of time with somebody helping you out for free, and you are guaranteed that you're doing stuff right, and that if compliance shows up at your door for a random inspection, you've already got somebody who's cleared you for it. Yeah, and I did just find the current salary rules for you, Ben. Right now, somebody has to be making around 57 a year, 57,000 a year to be salary exempt. And that's only if they also pass the responsibility and duties test. So you can't hire a cashier and say, oh, your salary, here's the money, you're going to work 80 hours a week, because they don't have the duties that would make them a white collar worker in effect. Yeah, Candace, that's a great point. They're not as bad as you imagine them to be. The compliance people are doing it to take care of folks. They will slap you with a fine if they have to. But luckily, L&I has the small business department division, I forget the exact term, that's there to really simplify it for you. Yeah, and then Diana's got a question in there as well about if you feature content area experts for a series of programs, they're rarely independent contractors since they're employed by somebody else. And she asks how you can pay them. That's a question that I'm going to email the small business division about. It's possibly written out somewhere where to do it, but it's a unique enough situation that that's what they're made for. That's what the small business division is for. So I'll email them, and if you want to put your email, you and Jason's email in the chat, I'll let you know what I find out. I do know I had to email them last week that if you've got a referral network set up where your customers get $5 in money if they get you a new client, they don't count as employees. So they'll get you an answer pretty quick, and they'll get you a very detailed answer on those really specific questions. Yeah, so let's see. Let me pull up this. Candace has got a question in here about classifying somebody as independent contractors or not. Let's see. And I want to pull up that 7-point test here, and we can kind of work through it together. Where are they? Sorry. I've got too many things going at once. And while I'm talking about it, I also see that Jay brought something up. This 6 or 7 point question is only about Washington Labor and Industries. The federal government and IRS uses a different set of stipulations. So today we are only talking about who the state of Washington requires you to categorize as an employee.
Yeah, well, that was something that I was caught up in as the contractor / employee many years ago. And there were, I think, 7 of us in the team. All were identified as independent contractors, and after whoever, whether it was L&I or the IRS or whomever, I was the only one that was actually deemed an independent contractor.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, probably lucky for you, less lucky for those who are paying the other independent contractors.
No, it was all the same company, but I was actually out, finding other customers. I had business cards, I had my own license and all that kind of stuff. And they were just, they didn't do all that stuff. They only worked for the one company. They worked 40 hours a week and stuff. So,
yeah. And Candace's question, it kind of depends. Like Jay was mentioning, if they're a professional salesperson who's got other customers and they're like, hey, I'm Jim Bob, the sales guy, hire me, I'll get you 10 clients and pay me a commission. I've got my own company. I'm working for you and a couple other people on the peninsula, and I'll drive around Seattle advertising all of you, and I'll, pay my business taxes myself. Then they would be an independent contractor, most likely. If they were showing up at the shop every morning at 7 and you were like, okay, I want you to go here and try to sell some products and take my car, and I'll see you back here at 5 and I want you to report on what you did. Then they're an employee. So it's different as well. And that's really the time where you will want to look at the resource that Miko sent you and kind of go through. And if you
Claire does have a
answer one of the
question too about that.
let us know. Yeah, go ahead, Claire.
Oh, I was just sort of gonna agree to that, and to say, like, think about a real estate agent. They're usually independent contractors. But then, like for me, before I came to Fin River, I was a sales rep for a winery and used my own car, and I made a base salary plus commission, but I was an employee. And so because of that, like, some companies will give you a car stipend, or they'll, cover your travels under their own insurance in terms of like rental car insurance and stuff like that. So I was just going to agree with you, Micah, that there's some nuance there, I think, in how you like what your relationship with the salesperson is.
Yeah, and it's a great point, and that's why it's really important before you hire somebody to kind of sit and think about how you want it to be. Because if you want them to be an independent contractor, there are certain people you can't hire. If they don't want to do it as a business, you can't really hire them as an independent contractor. We, in fact, worked with somebody a while ago who was trying to hire their friend as an independent contractor, and they didn't pass the test. But this friend had medical billing experience and realized, I know another person who needs help with medical billing. So they started a business as a medical biller and contracted with the 2 people they knew, so they could still remain an independent contractor instead of being an employee. So there are considerations that you will have to make as a business, and there are certain things that the independent contractor has to do as well. And then I see Candace has another question. As a business owner, you don't. You're not covered by workers' compensation unless you want to be. You can voluntarily opt in to be covered. Most small business owners don't, unless you are in a place where if you got hurt at work, it'd be devastating enough that you need it. So unless you're, if you're working as an anvil juggler, probably get workers' comp for yourself. If not, that's just sort of a risk assessment you make on your own. But labor and industries does not require you to have workers' comp for yourself, unless you are on payroll.
Micah, is there much of a difference between, let's say, a part-time worker and a full-time worker as far as L&I is concerned?
There isn't. Not with the record keeping and all of that. If somebody works part-time, they're an employee. There can be certain differences around minors, for example. They would be required to not go above a certain amount of time in a week, especially in the agricultural field. Along with that, they have specific duties that they can perform as minors. But for an 18-year-old up working, there really isn't much of a distinction between a part-time and full-time. Any other questions? As you go through it, I would like to say, I have given 3 quick 15-minute presentations through our Facebook at Center for Inclusive Entrepreneurship. And those are still up there on our Facebook page. And I cover the hiring your first employee, what you got to think about, the wage and hour rules of that, and exactly what counts as an employee and who all you have to communicate with that with. We also talk about wage and hour and overtime, wage laws and overtime laws, and we talk about the workers' safety, workers' comp side of things as well. And those are up there in English, in Spanish, and they're a little buried on our Facebook page at this point, but we are cutting them together at this point to make a nice, long, cohesive thing that we will be putting on our YouTube at some point in the future as well.
I was just wondering if all these helpful links that were put into the chat, if they could be emailed to those of us who attended today, because they were really great.
Yeah, definitely. And
Thank
I'll
you.
be emailing Miko a few more things today that would be useful to pass along based on what we talked about. And the Labor and Industries website is surprisingly easy to navigate. And the nice thing about it is all of it you can get for free digitally, or if you want, you can have them mail you the actual forms that they have online. They're surprisingly generous as a government agency. Most of what they'll give you is free, and almost every rule they have is easily accessible from their website. That's true, yeah. And Cindy dropped a good point in there. I am in the EDC office alternating Fridays. I won't actually be there tomorrow. I had a client emergency pop up here in the morning. But I'm there. One of us is there every single Friday. And you can always shoot me an email, even give me a text if you want, and I'll put that number here in the chat as well.
Well, thanks so much for joining us today, Micah. We really appreciate you.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
It's nice to have a friend to lean into that's done the research, so it's not such a daunting task to figure out how to work well with L&I. I like that you're offering us a shortcut.
Of course. Yeah, and we
Thanks.
do have speaking of that, we have a shortcut list for ourselves as well, which is effectively a table of common questions we've been asked and the pages on labor and industries that we ended up finding and using. So if you need to know what you need for plumbing inside a residential kitchen, I've got the 2 pages for you right there. So if you've got questions, shoot me an email, give me a call, shoot me a text, whichever's easiest for you. I'll either have the answer here for you at my fingertips or be able to email the folks with you on your behalf as well.
Very nice.
Thanks, Micah.
Of course.
Yep,
Yeah.
thank you.
And thanks for everybody for joining us today. We're just here to serve, so I appreciate that you come and listen and learn with us. Thank you.
Thank you very much.